Good morning. It's July 15th today, and we're in Romans chapter 2. And I'm going to do something I don't normally do this morning, and let's talk about systematic theological systems or models. And so there's two particular models that are common in evangelicalism for understanding the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament in particular, and kind of the flow of the entirety of Scripture. How is it all worked out? What's the big story of Scripture? And one of those is called dispensationalism. One of those is called covenantalism. And there are a number of varieties of a bunch of those things. So there are several different kinds of dispensationalism. There are several different kinds of covenantalism. And there are some models that are both or neither of those things or have a combination of some of those things in them. And honestly, they are things that aren't all of that important to me. However, they are highly debated even within churches, within staffs on churches, and and honestly, for the most part, I think our church does a really good job of towing the line and not making those things too important, and certainly not things of contention within our church. We have people of all different varieties in our congregation and even on our staff. And the reason I bring that up is because Romans 2 is one of those places that if you're a proponent of one of those systems, you probably have a hard time reading it in any other way than is according to your system. And I'll admit that that's the case for me too. It's these systems make it so that you can almost not see scripture in any other way. And some would say, well, that's the way I've always read scripture and the way that I've understood it. And once I understood the system, then I thought, oh yeah, that's how I've always read scripture. And that might be the case. Um, and it would be interesting actually to find somebody who was well educated in scripture, had no idea what these systems were, and then to ask them particular questions and find out where they might fall in terms of those things. If somebody who hadn't been colored by those systems at some point. Anyway, I'm probably beyond what is important to you, but this is one of those things here. It says circumcision has value if you observe the law, but if you break the law, you have become as though you have not been circumcised. So then, if you are not circumcised, if those who are not circumcised keep the law's requirements, will they not be regarded as though they were circumcised? The one who is not circumcised physically and yet obeys the law will condemn you, who, even though you have the written code and circumcision, are a lawbreaker. Now, here's where it comes to these systems. A person is not a Jew who is not one who is one only outwardly, nor is circumcision merely outward and physical. No, a person is a Jew who is one inwardly, and circumcision is circumcision of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the written code. Such a person's praise is not from other people, but from God. What advantage then is there in being a Jew, or what value is there in circumcision? Much in every way. First of all, the Jews have been entrusted with the very words of God. What if some were unfaithful? Will their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? So the question is, how do we define what a Jew is and what is the sign of being a Jew or a Gentile or a person of God, a member of the family of God? Is it circumcision for the Old Testament, maybe baptism or something like that in the New Testament? Or was it always the fact that a person who is part of God's family is somebody who has been circumcised in the heart? That is an unphysical, a spiritual circumcision that happens to them. And so that's at the heart of that debate in some sense. So there's some who would say there's one system for Jews in the Old Testament, a different system for those who are under the new covenant, and someday maybe that will change again, maybe after the rapture or something like that. So anyway, that just brought that to my mind this morning, and I think it's important to think about who actually is a member of the family of God, and I say that that's by grace through faith, and that's all God's work for us. It has nothing to do with any rituals or even any ethnicity. That's it for today.